In the dragon's front feet, it contained a small of pile blocks. A small pile. What is that? What am I saying? In the dragon's front feet, it contained a pile of blocks. There we go. And here is another drawing that I didn't do. You're welcome. As John walked up to get a closer look, he tripped, stumbling onto the dragon's front leg and falling into a hole. It lifted its head, confused and angry, but the dragon didn't see John inside of the hole, so it lowered its head again. John knew he had to do this quickly. He knew that he would need to make it back out of the hole even when he grabbed the items, but didn't know how. And the trip down the mountain would be so much more easy than the trip up it. John clambered up out of the hole, face to face with the dragon again. John quickly made a grab for the 2 blocks, managing to only take one, but the dragon didn't wake, so he placed the first one into his torso and then grabbed for the other one. As soon as John got a grip of it in his hooves, he was teleported back to the main island. What the hell? John said to himself, still holding the second block. It was slightly squishy. When John flinched, he squeezed it and he could feel it collapse in slightly, like a hard pillow. It was squishy for about the first centimeter, but on the inside felt like soft wood that was harder than the outside. He looked back. He looked at the block, noticing the rolls of white that he would usually find on clouds. He could instantly tell that this was what the puppeteer's first compass was. Oh, dang! Puppeteer is capitalized. He could instantly tell that this was what the puppeteer's first compass was made from. Yeah. John had found the cloudstone he would need to construct the power housing. What the heck? Okay, I don't know what that says. I'm just gonna put G again for later. Comment G. Jesus Christ. Okay, Compass of the Defiant Soul. Oh God, I deleted some things that I shouldn't have done. Oh my gosh. Chapter 41, Compass of the Defiant Soul. Okay. John had regained his ability to fly, and he took out the cloudstone from his degrading torso and set it on a rock that he could easily come back to later. He flew to another quadrant of the island, noticing the dead grass fading out into cavernous stone. He looked across the island that connected it to that one and made his way over, again losing his ability to fly as soon as he touched the ground. There were holes everywhere, cliffs and strangely tall mountains surrounded him, underneath all of which were strangely dark shadows. The island was pretty small on the surface, having lots of holes and mountains that exponentially grew in height the further he looked to the center, but he could see no dragon. But he did see smoke coming out of one of the holes in the middle of the island. The problem was getting down there. John slid into a hole, instantly not knowing where he was stepping, or crawling rather. The night vision of the compass of Seek seemed to fail. Everything about the compass of Seek seemed to fail. John crawled around, slipping on edges and almost falling down a distance that he couldn't even see. He crawled until he saw he had reached the middle of the island as the smell of smoke had gotten pretty strong. He descended a level, grabbing a grip awkwardly in his hooves that he had found near another hole. He kicked around and finally found a spot where he could let go and get on that layer. The hole continued down another 10 layers until John slipped and fell. He lashed out at an attempt to grab something, almost having a heart attack, but then realizing he had no heart. He fell about 3 feet and landed on an indented part of the floor. John was relieved that it didn't go all the way through, but could see some holes on the way down where it did go all the way through. John finally felt around until he found an opening that led inward again. He was able to stand up and see a little bit, and John could spot the dragon in the center, clutching a pile of blocks that seemed to be a different gray color than the walls. They were spotted with brown, and the rest was a light gray. John inched forward about to grab one of the blocks when the dragon snorted and made John flinch back. He continued forward until he was in easy grabbing distance of the block on top. He made a snatch for it, accidentally grazing the dragon on his way to the block in the darkness. It woke up, snorted again, that stood up, and then stood up, and John bolted to the wall, still making sure not to fall in any of the holes. He slotted the block into his torso. The dragon seemed to be just as blind there as John, and it swiped at the walls looking for him, but John had ran to the middle of the room and grabbed the second block. He bet that his camouflage... Oh, dang, I keep forgetting that, Okay, I'm just getting rid of this sentence completely. The dragon had been unsuccessful as it swiped its paw around the room, and John teleported back to the island, standing on the porous ground of the center quadrant. Another drawing that I didn't do. He flew back over the rock on the island with blue grass and cloud bushes, and placed the block of rock metal on the block next to the others. And then he took the other rock metal block out of his torso and stacked it on top of the first one. John then flew over the top of the mountain, seeing that it was another mountainous landscape, but this time it was just mountains. They had snow on top, but were mainly focused on the mountains other than the snow. John flew back over the gap, this time not wanting to land on the surface just to see what would happen. He flew over the island, then dropped downward, landing in a small patch of fluffy grass. He climbed up, beginning to wander inward. He didn't see any smoke, so he guessed he would just have to guess where he was in relation to the dragon when he started heading in. And there was no increase in mountain height at the center this time. That would prove harder to tell where he was, especially when the horizon of the mountains blocked out the view of the edge of the island. He would just be wandering around the mountains until he found the dragon. He was going as fast as he could tell the puppeteer. Oh my gosh. He was going as fast as he could tell the puppeteer only needed one more thing to destroy the universe. But John was closer to obtaining it than he was, even though John didn't know it. He wandered around the mountains, deciding to climb one to get to the top as an attempt to scope out the center. He could see the center, but as he started heading toward it, the mountains around him seemed to shift places as John found himself back at the edge, so he guessed it was just dumb luck when he found it. John saw the dragon, again huddling a pile of blocks. He was in broad daylight, so he had to be really careful. The dragon wasn't sleeping, but it was just facing the opposite direction. John tiptoed on his bare toes to the dragon, making sure not to let any of the dirt and gravel mix he was stepping over make any sound. He reached out for a block when a pink explosion lit up the sky behind him. He flinched and fell on the dragon as it looked upward to the sky, distracted. John quickly grabbed two of the mountaintop blocks and was teleported back to the island. And yet another drawing I didn't do. You're welcome. Here's a new perspective. The puppeteer had weeded out every place that the person could be, but this area up in the clouds looked like a perfect hideout. After he had explored the ruins of the island of Laxity for the crystal that would finally let him be able to overpower the universe, he had come upon 5 new islands even higher than the island of Laxity would be. He floated up to the top, noticing a rainbow sphere in the middle of the main island. Just inside it is what he needed. He tried everything from walking through it to a huge explosion to try to and open it up, but it would not budge. So he switched his attention to the human soul he had sensed on the mountainous island, and as soon as he got close, the soul seemed to switch locations, leaving the puppeteer confused. "No!" he shouted into the star-filled blue sky. And here's a drawing of him because he had been tinted by the sister dimension, so that's why he is pink. So he worked on finding him again, and the end of the perspective. The puppeteer was near, so John flew over to the rock, and instead of taking the 2 blocks out of his torso, he stuffed the other ones into it to protect them against the puppeteer finding them. He needed to cover the tops of them with his intestines or else they'd fall out. But after John did this, he quickly fled to the final island without so much as a glance to how the quadrant looked. He flew so fast to this island that he was about to land on that. He rolled a little bit when he made full contact. He rolled right into a tree. He looked up and noticed the puppeteer had caught sight